All right.
Okay, we are going. Welcome to Diabolicast, the sixth episode, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we are having this for the sixth time, and it doesn't feel like it's been six times. It feels a lot faster than that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how are you today, Jonathan?
I'm doing pretty all right. I'm taking it easy.
Yeah, that's what we want because we're going to be discussing, one really quite intense movie to talk about. So I think that's a good idea. Yeah, for sure. And we're not going to talk about that movie first. We're going to talk about it second. So we're going to talk about Starship Troopers first, and then we're going to move on to Synecdoche, New York. After that. So seeing as I'm the one who recommended it, I'll try to introduce Starship Troopers. Uh, so it's set in the future. Um, it follows like a squadron of soldiers. Um, they focus on one soldier and specifically, I think his name was Rico or John Rico or something like that.
Yeah.
And he basically, for this girl, he goes um, to war, and seeing that it's in the future, this this camp is like futuristic, a bit silly, a bit campy, and like there are so many it's there's so many like archetypes there, but and the film kind of pokes fun at them, and of course as the film goes along, it gets a lot more a bit more absurd and complicated than that, and we'll go into that later. But yeah, so putting that aside, John, what did you think of Starship Troopers?
I actually really liked it, and I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did, but it was fun, but it was also a really good commentary, and I think people kind of missed that upon its release.
Yeah, I was actually I was a bit stunned that people didn't like it on release. It just feels so obvious to me that it's, being poking fun or just, it's not supposed to be taken seriously, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's what took me by surprise. And another thing that took me by surprise was that it can be enjoyed as like a straightforward war film as well, I think. Sure, it's a bit silly and, it's definitely more creature based than like, war based. But I think that if you were to watch this as a straightforward war film, I don't think you'd be disappointed. It's still pretty entertaining and well paced
Yeah.
as well. And I guess the first thing when you talk about this film is the absurdist comedy in terms of like what happens on the boot camp and what happens especially in when they're on the ship and the cruises. Um, for example, I remember there was one scene where they're doing this drill exercise and they're practicing, and then uh, Rico tells one of them to take his helmet off, and then he just gets killed. And I don't know, maybe I was like, I found it really hilarious because it was just like the amount of like the way they shot it and the way how silly they make it look. It's just funny, but it's not something that'd be funny in like a normal war film, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of comedy in this movie that is derived from just how exaggerated a lot of the things are. But at its core, it is still a. I don't want to say fully serious because it is very playful in some parts, but I don't know. Parts of it are pretty serious with its message of um just like how you know like the how you grow up can determine how your life plays out and how the government can kind of control you and bend you to their liking.
Yeah, it's there's definitely like a commentary in that, and I think that's very evident in like those infomercial scenes where do you want to know more? Those kind of scenes. That's when the satire is like very obvious. Like um, that's when it becomes the most like clear to me. And the war scenes where they're really serious is the most subtle to me, because uh, if you're just watching passively, you might not pick it up. But if you're thinking about it, there's a lot of there's a lot of cool stuff they hide, and the fact that they played straightforward was actually the best way to to like communicate these themes and messages, I think.
Hmm. And with a lot of those like propaganda ads and everything, it's like it's a bit of it has they have like an it like their own arc, like because you see from the beginning they're kind of cluttered, and by the end, they sort everything out into like this very streamlined and like it makes everything look like sunshine and rainbows, and at the end of the movie has one, and I don't want to spoil the ending yet, but
Hmm.
it kind of everything comes full circle with all of those, and I feel like it does help the story out a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the reason why people didn't understand it at the time was because it was so straightforward. But the thing about Paul Verhoeven, who directed this movie, I think his satire is very subtle. I don't think he likes to make his satire too obvious. Like same with the only other film I've seen by him is Showgirls, and that's a prime example that his satire is very subtle. And the same is with this movie. But there are certain aspects where it's more obvious for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, Paul Verhoeven also directed RoboCop, and I haven't seen that movie, but I've heard a lot of comparisons to this movie between the two about like how just horribly violent it is, yet it kind of paints this like the all these killers as kind of heroes, and
Yeah.
you know it's very much the point is to kind of show like a society where like killing is okayed and supported, and it's kind of shocking and scary at a lot of parts, and
Yeah.
it's really gory too. Like I was not expecting that.
No, yeah, there are some scenes which are really gory, and I agree with your point where you said that the film kind of does a satire of like normalizing violence. Like, you see that they put censor bars over certain like images, but like when there's just general like violence, no one cares. But when it's like sexual related, everyone's like, oh, let's censor it. So that's definitely a commentary on like normalization of violence and the media picking and choosing on what they want to focus on and stuff like that.
Yeah, it is. And like I noticed a lot about um just like there's a lot of subliminal hints that the aliens weren't actually like dangerous to the earth, and the the government just wanted to pick a fight with them because of, like whatever reason, and like they're just fighting in self-defense, and yet everybody on earth is told that they're a threat that needs to be stopped, and it's still relevant today, and it's honestly pretty scary just how like much it kind of rings true in at least the US government.
Yeah, that's the scary part of this film is that it's still true to this day, and it shouldn't be. It should be something we've, like at least tried to fix, but we haven't. And nothing much has changed since 1997 when this film came out. So I guess Verhoeven was kind of and ahead of his time with this film, I think.
Yeah, it's honestly really held up through the years too, like with the special effects. I was like most of it looks really good. The set design is really nice, and it uses green screen and CGI sparingly, which I thought was to its benefit.
I agree. I think the CGI reminded me of like a PlayStation 2 game, but like in a good way. It wasn't like dated or distracting. It was like it was charming and endearing, kind of.
This movie does kind of feel like a video game at times, which is how everything plays out.
Yeah, I think that's very true. That did cross my mind at one point that it's like this. If someone made this film into a video game, I think that'd be a good idea because it shares a lot of similarities for me. I think.
hmm And like the arc of like the main characters is just really, really intense when you think about it. Like this innocent and naive young guy who signs up for the military because he doesn't really know what else he wants to do, and he's guaranteed a nice life when he's finished serving. And just how he's corrupted and poisoned into this mindless killing machine by the end of the movie, and the US is framing it as something to be proud of. instead of something that's bad.
Yeah, that's very true. I think that it's kind of sad that, him at the start was actually like what he wanted to do with his life, but as the film went on, the military kind of manipulated him to believing that he should be like some killing machine or something that he's not. And I think that's kind of sad, even though the film doesn't frame it that way, the concept and the message that the film is emitting is like very poignant. I think with that whole that whole like story arc at least.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the aspects didn't really work for me. I thought the love square that they have going on, it is kind of in line with like what the first, I don't know, 20 minutes or so of the movie had like going on.
Yeah.
It was very teen movie, and like that's fine and all, but they continue that storyline throughout the movie, and I just thought it was a little tonally unbalanced towards the end.
Yeah, I think yeah, I can see that. And I think for me, I think that got a little bit repetitive. Like they kept bringing it back and they could have focused on other things like Neil Patrick Harris's character with the games room, I think.
Hmm.
I think they could have cut a bit of that subplot in order to add a bit more of something else, but it's not a big deal, but
Yeah, and like it's not like it doesn't really detract from the movie at all. It's still entertaining. It's actually really entertaining despite its long length. I mean, relatively long. It's a bit over 2 hours. I mean, it's a really well made movie, and I was not expecting it to be. I was thinking it was like a pulpy action movie, and it is to an extent, but it's also a really good anti-war satire.
yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And for I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I was just completely entertained and completely and like entranced to say the word for the majority of the runtime, and I think that calls for me for giving me a high rating. But yeah,
Yeah, it's a really solid movie.
yeah. So do you want to get into spoilers a bit?
Sure.
So basically, they keep trying to fight this alien planet, which we've established that didn't even have to happen in the first place. But and they discover that these alien species have been, like this is a bit early, but they discover that they've been like, taking people's brains and stuff like that. So when they go into the cave, um, they find they find the bugs and of course, like the girl gets saved and that other guy gets killed. I can't remember his name, but
Mhm.
and then Neil Patrick Harris's character says, "Oh, we've made a discovery on how we're gonna kill um, these bugs, right?" And um, the ending is kind of like like we're America, like fuck yeah type of ending, and
Mhm.
and you can see Rico. He's like officially like a part of the force, and he's a leader, and um, yeah, that's what I remember of the ending. I don't. Yeah, the once. Yeah.
It's a very interesting ending, and like something I noticed was that Neil Patrick Harris's character is dressed like a Nazi, which is a really weird bit of subtext that makes a lot of sense once you really realize what his character is doing. And it's a really sad moment when he's like it's afraid and everybody cheers because that's
Mm,
it's like I was on the alien side for almost all of the movie once I realized that the Americans started the war, and it's really sad when you view it through that lens, and it is very Team America at the end, and like people don't want to know like the burdens of war in the end. They just want a hero to root for in the war, and you know, the military wants a hero too, just so they can get more recruits from kids who idolize them, and it's really sad.
yeah, I thought it was had a bit of a sad undertone as well. I mean, I didn't really root for the aliens, but I wasn't really rooting for like the soldiers either. But to see like his character say like it's afraid, it kind of just like showed to me how far we are from actually like understanding where like the other side is coming from, and that we only care about patriotism and winning and being heroic, but we don't necessarily understand like the complex emotions that might stir up, you know, from doing these actions.
Hmm. And there's like that one moment, a little humanity earlier in the movie, where the alien is looking at the guy, and he's almost dead, and then the guy just shoots him to pieces, and it's just that
Mm.
mindless violence, and like they don't want to sort it out, they just want to kill, and it's this constant, we don't know why we're having this war, but the military tells us it's because they started it. And it all stems from that lie. And it's just a really interesting movie that comments a lot about how messed up our our military is.
Yeah, and this movie could have gone the serious route to portray these messages, but because it's a bit silly, it helps to balance out that really um, that kind of realistic message that it has, and I think that's where it succeeds the most. Is that it doesn't, and it does take it seriously at the same time.
Hmm.
It's kind of one of those movies, and I think that each character, like the girl, the guy, and like the War and Games guy, Neil Patrick Harris character, they all represent different sides of like war ideology. Like Rico at the start is kind of like a bit more anti-war towards the start, but gradually he gets manipulated into like being like this war machine. Um, the girl is just like the stereotypical soldier that I want to fight for my country and I got to do my duty and stuff like that. And and then Neil Patrick Harris's character is like the gamesman, the scientists behind this that enable this stuff to happen. And of course you have your higher ups and your sergeants and your people who actually like are running it overall. So there are various like it kind of mirrors reality in a way, but in like kind of a hilarious way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and this movie is, despite a lot of its more gruesome content, actually really funny at times. Especially in the beginning, there's a part where they're enrolling for the military, and the guy who's doing um who's working at the desk he's like the 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 military made me who I am today, and then like the camera pans down and he has no legs, and I just that was a wonderful moment of just brutal comedy.
Yeah, it's like yeah, they made you who you are today, and it's like yeah, but you lost your legs, and it's just like it's that contrast, it's that juxtaposition that makes it so hilarious. And the fact I found it really funny. I don't know if this was intentional, but when he gets the lashes for accidentally killing one of his comrades, um, he starts to leave, and then the whole bloody city blows up, and then it's so extreme and so like out of nowhere that I just found it really hilarious for some reason, and this causes him to stay. So it's like the only reason he's staying is because there's like an obligation or that he has to. But like if you think about it, he doesn't want to be there. He's just doing it because like everything else around him is telling him to be there.
Hmm. I mean, I
And I
think.
found that yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna add that I found that both like kind of funny and sad at the same time. That he feels like he has to like kind of convince himself that he has to be there, but at the same time, it's kind of a loss of identity in the sense that he's not doing what he actually wants to do.
I think, I mean, the reality is his home was there and he had no home to come back to. So I think part of it is him being like, ah, screw it, I may as well do this. But the other part of me is just thinking that, he was kind of manipulated by the military into, coming back and, leading the troops into battle with these arachnids. And I don't know, it just, it's really, really
Yeah,
sad, honestly.
it is sad because like at the end of the day, you're right. He didn't really have an option. His home was obliterated, and I think I find it funny in the fact that that actually happened. Like the film seems to be against the character. It's like, oh, you want to do this? Like, kind of like stuff you. We're gonna blow up your whole city, and you can't do anything about it. And it's just that sort of cynicism that I found kind of funny. Like, um, he has no choice. He's got to, whether he likes it or not. And yeah, it's kind of it's sad as well. But the film kind of has a cynical edge to it that you can kind of get from it, at least to me.
Yeah, and like it's like a sci-fi version of Full Metal Jacket, and it's not as good as Full Metal Jacket. It's much sillier and much less um like just riveting, but it does still kind of follow that formula of the first half is them forming the identity, and the second half is the identity coming full circle, and there any humanity that this person had is lost.
Yeah, I think there's similarities between those films, and I think they go beyond them just being war films. I think there are thematic and like similarities, but of course, as you said, one's sillier than the other. But I haven't seen Full Metal Jacket in a while, so I can't say if it's better, but it's definitely close in quality. I can definitely say that.
I wouldn't say that, but I mean they're both good movies, but Full Metal Jacket's one of my favorites, and Starship Troopers is good and all, but I don't know that it's one of my favorites.
No, that's fair enough. I'll have to rewatch Full Metal Jacket, but I haven't seen it in like I don't know, like 2 years. But yeah.
Yeah, it Starship Troopers. Um, like there's a lot to admire about it, and I feel like it did what it wanted to do really well, and the results is something that I can honestly say I like better than any Star Wars movie, except maybe the holiday special. And I'm being completely serious. That's my favorite piece of Star Wars media is the holiday
It's
special.
hilarious. I
Yes,
mean, yeah,
it's perfect.
the stuff that happens in that special is crazy.
Hmm.
Like going slightly off topic, but I like that. I like the anime. I unironically like the animated sequence for the animation, and it's kind of really hilarious. In like, I think they were kind of self-aware with the humor of it. I don't think they were entirely like oh, this is good quality. I think there is a tad bit of self-awareness involved in the Star Wars Holiday Special. Yeah.
Yeah, like I know everybody likes to just crap on the holiday special, but I think it's more entertaining and not well made, but funnier than any of the Star Wars movies. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah. I
wonderful.
mean, no, I mean, I probably agree more with you. Sure, it's not like it's not great, but it's you're right that it's entertaining, and I personally I do think The Empire Strikes Back is probably like a little probably better, but that's not a controversial opinion, but you know if I just want something like really fun, kind of bad, kind of like in the vein of the Garbage Pail Kids, I'll probably put that on. Like, like, oh, if you, it's bad, but if you ever get the chance one day, just to see like how bad something can be, watch the Garbage Pail Kids. It's just hilarious. It's great.
Part of me is intrigued, and part of me is just sad that that even exists.
Yeah, I saw it like 3 years ago when I was like so when I was younger, I had probably more tolerance for like bad stuff. But like if I watch it now, it'll probably I don't know if it get on my nerves, but I remember just laughing at it constantly just because how ridiculous it was.
It does seem
Mm.
like one of those movies.
Yeah, it must be seen to be believed, I think. But I think that people, especially critics at the time, might have even said like Starship Troopers was like on the level of quality of like Garbage Pail Kids or something. There were a few critics that absolutely despise this movie for some reason, and I think as more time goes on, people start to see that it's relevant. It might be a bit silly, and maybe not everything works about it, but it still succeeds more than it fails in my opinion.
Yeah, it is a pretty great work, even if like I don't know how much I'm going to come back to it. I mean, it is. I don't know. It is. It's for a specific mood, and I
Yeah.
mean, I like. I'll probably watch it again sometime, but I don't know that it'll be anytime soon because it is it's a bit hard to categorize because it's both a movie to kind of just you know chill out to and just just like if you're tired, it's a good movie to just entertain you. But like it's also a good movie if you want like a brain workout, which is really weird, but um it's just it has this really weird mold and I can't really say it fits a lot of like what I tend to look for in a movie because like I'm not a huge sci-fi person and I mean horror movies are really hit or miss for me, but I do think this movie is really well made.
No, I'd agree. Sure, it's not for everyone, and I imagine you have to be in like a specific mood to like enjoy it. But I think that if you at least watch it once just to see what it's about, I don't think you'd regret the experience. It's a very solid movie, and same here. I probably wouldn't like go back to this film all the time, but I would definitely see myself rewatching this in the future for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Uh, we'll go to scores, I guess.
Sure.
So, um, if I gave this a 9 when I initially watched it. Thinking about it more, it might still be a 9, but it might just be like a very high 8. But we'll see if I like change my score. But yeah, it's about that range. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a 7 or 8 for me. And I think I mean I give it a 7 initially, and I think I'm gonna stick with that. It is a 7 out of 10 for me. I mean it's a lot of really good commentary. It's just not something I'm going to return to anytime soon. But it is solid. It's well made, and I would recommend it.
No, same here. And hopefully you have seen it by the time you got into the end. I hope you didn't just get spoiled it because it's a film I think that really succeeds when you haven't like you don't know what it's about or you haven't seen it. So
Just don't go in expecting a straightforward pulpy action movie because it's a lot more satirical than that. And if you're just watching it and hating it because of all the mindless violence and horrible government decisions, just know that all of it is intentional and all of it is designed to mock the behavior.
yeah, it's not supposed to be like absolutely serious. There's a tongue-in-cheek element to it, which I appreciate.
Also, this is kind of random, but did you hear that they were playing "Fade Into You" by Mazzy Star during one of the fight sequences?
Oh yeah, yeah. I heard a little bit of it. It kind of like took me by surprise a little bit.
Yeah, it was really weird. Like it came out of nowhere, and it never really had any consistency with the movie. And I mean, I love that song; it's one of my favorites. But like, it, why?
Yeah, there are. I don't know how that ties into like the whole satirical edge of the film, but I'm sure there was a purpose to it. But I'm still glad to see it in the film. It's just like, what was the purpose of it? I guess. Mm. But yeah, I think that's a lot of this film. In terms of like people could get confused to the purpose of it, but that in particular is kind of a bit dumbfounding. But it's welcome to see it anyway.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so we had to inevitably get to this point where we talk about probably one of the most polarizing films of the last 10, 15 years. That is Synecdoche, New York, and directed by Mr. Charlie Kaufman. Uh, and seeing as you recommended, John, you want to just give like a rundown of like the general plot.
It's kind of hard to explain because a lot happens to it, like in the movie. But essentially, it's a 2008 movie about a guy who kind of has an existential crisis for the entirety of his life, and I mean, he's a theater director, and he has a lot of struggles with relationships, and he wins a MacArthur grant, and he puts it all into this gigantic theater piece, that's really really hard to explain, and the movie just kind of jumps off from there into
Yeah.
nothingness.
Yeah. So I imagine that this film is it's a very cold film. It's a very honest film, at least to me. It feels like Charlie was coming from a very you know honest place. It feels like something he had to get off his chest, and you know I've always liked it. John, would you like to just give a rundown of your thoughts?
Oh boy. Um, I hate Synecdoche, New York because I can't hate it, if that makes sense. It's like so well acted, and it's like the set design is impressive. All of the all of the conversations feel very natural, and like everything, like it is a functional movie. It's very well made. Unfortunately, so like I can't, like that's the thing, like I can't bring myself to call it a horrible movie, but it all stems from the actual content of the movie, and that it's like it's telling me to sympathize with this person who I absolutely hate, and like I don't know, it's made me
Mm.
realize I am not that depressed compared to this person, because
Yeah.
he's just so just he can't get out of it, and he doesn't want to, honestly.
No, I get that, and I think that was kind of the point in that he's supposed to be unlikable. He does so many terrible things throughout the movie if you really think about it. But the point is that he's like stuck in a loop where he'll probably never change, um, and he'll just keep on doing the same things like repetitively. Like the whole middle of the movie is just him trying to fill his life with things that to fill the void that Adele isn't there and stuff like that. And um, I don't think that he was supposed to be likable. I think he's just supposed to be kind of a reflection of a real human being, just someone who's really has a lot of flaws and just, of course, he has his good points like anyone, but um, I could see that totally like someone like you could like absolutely like you could hate the character, which I totally get. But yeah.
Here's the thing, like it's one thing if you want to make a movie about an unlikable person, and like I always come back to There Will Be Blood. I mean, it's if you want to make a hateable, immensely flawed character study, do that because it often results in great movies. But this movie, it feels like it's manipulating me into trying to sympathize with this horrible sociopath. And I mean, when I realized that, like, with all of Charlie Kaufman's movies, I feel like he just writes himself in
Mm.
all of the main characters, right down to adaptation where he is the main character. It just it's like I think I finally nailed down why I don't like Charlie Kaufman's movies as much as everybody else does, and it's just Charlie Kaufman is not a likable person at all.
Mm. I mean, like, I think that Charlie Kaufman, whether like people like it or not, he puts himself in his movies, and that, like you said, that could totally like make someone like kind of dislike it because you might not like Charlie Kaufman's like way of you know interpreting his own life and putting it to the film, but that aspect is like doesn't really bother me. I feel like the characters are fleshed out and have their own perspectives to the point where I didn't feel like it was just Charlie like just trying to take over everything. Even though like him, a part of himself is in this film, I've never felt that way about it. But I could totally see that. Yeah.
And see, like, I don't know, like in adaptation, which I think is my favorite of his now, he he writes himself into his own screenplay, and there's a part where he's like, it's self-indulgent, it's narcissistic, and I'm like, yes, it is, and like they acknowledge that, and like it's meta and self-aware in that aspect, and I honestly thought it kind of improved the movie, that and it's Nick Cage and everything is better with Nick Cage, and like I was like, okay, that's great. And like then he made Eternal Sunshine and Confessions of a Dangerous Mind and stuff. Then he makes Synecdoche, New York, which is, self-indulgent and narcissistic, and it's just like so hypocritical. Like there's no
Mm.
growth, and I get that's kind of the theme of the movie is like an endless loop of no change, but that's kind of, I don't know. It just
Well,
Charlie Kaufman is in that loop, and he keeps making the same movie over and over.
yeah, I think I know where that stems from, but I've always thought this movie is about. I don't think it's very selfish. I think it's about everyone in a way. I don't. This is something that's personal to me, but um, sometimes I see myself within the film in terms of like me as a person. Sure, I don't. I thank God I don't do everything Kanan does, but I can kind of see where some of his stems of thoughts come from, and you know, stuff that happens in the movie, makes can make me self-conscious about myself, and it's something that it does help me sometimes to like deal with stuff that I'm kind of thinking about. And yeah, the films really can be quite a, a bit depressing and a little negative, but I think it kind of helps me to kind of like come to terms with things. And yeah, I don't know. It's just not something that really bothers me in terms of like how he decided to put himself or characterize a lot of the characters or something like that. But I don't think it's a perfect film by any means. But it's got flaws for sure, which I guess we'll talk about later. But yeah.
See, I think it's interesting that you like. I mean, like I've seen people call this like this movie and a lot of his other movies like therapeutic, and it just puts me in a funk. It puts me in a bad mood, and it's I like movies that put me in a bad mood. Grave of the Fireflies, I love that movie. It's amazing, but that movie is very like a very objective, like non-manipulative view on this horrible tragedy, and I mean, I know some people might disagree with me on that, but I don't think it's emotionally manipulative at all. Whereas this movie, I feel just baited and like, just guilted into trying like he Charlie Kaufman like desperately wants me to sympathize with this person, and part of me is like, yeah, I too am a nihilist, and I think, I mean, life is meaningless, and you should fill it with things you love, but Caden
Mm.
can't just accept the fact that life is meaningless and live it to the best of his abilities, and instead
Yeah.
he's in this funk and he brings everybody around him down with him, and I just hate him for that.
No, I think that's definitely a character flaw, and that's definitely a flaw that someone could take issue with the film as a whole. But I think that towards the end we start to see that he come to terms with it a little bit, and when he's I don't maybe a bit of a spoiler I guess, um, but I assume if you're listening to this you've already seen the movie, but so spoiler warning I guess. But towards the end when when he eventually he does die, he he's on the shoulder of someone else, and you know despite of what he's done for the entire the runtime of the film, it feels like with that earpiece in his ear he's finally like kind of tried to make peace with himself in a way. That's how I interpret it anyway. Um, and and it's a bit tragic that when he does that, he immediately dies afterwards, and it's kind of a very bittersweet thing to me. I don't
Hmm.
know. But yeah, I yeah, were you gonna say something?
It, the problem with the entirety of the movie all stems from Caden, and I think, and that which like in itself just stems from Charlie Kaufman, because like I keep saying, he just writes himself into all of his movies, and part of me thinks, oh, that's good because you can be brutally honest, and like the more you see of yourself in a character, the more honest and like well articulated that character will be, the more fleshed out it'll be. And Kitten is a fleshed out character, but like it just
Mm.
makes him all the more unlikable. And yeah, again, like character flaws, but I don't think he sees them as character flaws. I don't think he needs to improve them. Like Daniel Plainview is all about making money and having success, and he like kind of puts up this nice facade so he can milk this land for all it's worth. And
Hmm.
Caden just manipulates others in all sorts of ways, and you know, some of it has a negative effect on him. But like on the other hand, like one of my biggest problems with all of Charlie Kaufman's movies is that he has like women throwing themselves at him. Like I know it's not technically him, but I mean he kind of just writes himself in the movies, and like he just has a fundamental misunderstanding of women, and like he's just like
Mm.
all women have to sleep with this main character, and like you know like
Mm.
and he's never
I would
happy.
hard disagree with that, but I don't really agree with that at all. I think that the film, just seeing how many relationships he has and how many don't work out, and the film clearly shows that he's he's in the wrong and that they fail all the time. And there's always that outside reflection, like when, again, spoiler, but when Sammy commits suicide, he talks about how Caden's never thought about anybody but himself, and you know even that's a very, what he does is terrible, and I think that it's probably not one of my favorite scenes in the film. It does talk to how you know Adele left because he wasn't supportive, he wasn't there. She's dissatisfied, so she goes to Germany and basically ditches him. You know, um, Hazel tries to get, but he's cold and closed, so that doesn't work out. But and then later in the film they get back together. And then the third one is, and Michelle Williams' character is just a placeholder for Caden, so he can have something in his life to preoccupy him before he has to actually think about the problems he actually has in his mind. So I get where you're coming from. I just don't really agree. I think that um, yeah, the women aren't written as like um, as you typically would, but I think they do speak to you know they are the key to like kind of understanding like Caden's thought process. And sorry if I got a bit rambly, but that's like the gist of it in my head anyway.
See, hmm, see, like, it, I kind of get what you're saying, but I feel like, you know, I don't get the attraction initially. Like, I don't get how any of this ended up happening. Because if Kid truly was like that all the time, I don't think any women would have wanted to be with him or would have liked him at all.
Hmm.
And, it's just like all of the women are like throwing themselves at Caden, and like it never works out. I mean, but like it
I
just
think,
I don't
yeah.
get the initial attraction. I mean, he's a horrible person. He's a sociopath, and he has, he always says he's sick, and he's has all sorts of random weird defects that I think stem from his thought process of just constantly thinking about death. And I don't get why anybody would want to be with
That's a very good point. But one thing I'd say, like what I from my point of view, I would say to that is that I think that ties into the concept of the film. I think the film says at one point, everybody's disappointing the more the more to get, the more you. I can't I can't speak right now. Yeah, it's something along the lines of like the more you know someone, the more disappointing they get essentially. So the more time we spend with Caden, the more disappointing we are with his real self. Because I think to me the film's like saying the less we show of ourselves, or the more we try to make up kind of like a better version of ourselves, the more disappointed people will be later. So to these women, Caden must have been something else to them when they started taking an interest to him, because he's a theater director. He seems like a nice guy, whatever. But as they go on, they start to realize that Caden's not this. He's, yeah, as you said, he's a bit of a sociopath for a bit. So I I totally get it though. Yeah.
And see, all of this would be fine. It would be an interesting character study if it didn't try and bait you into and manipulate you into like trying to like Caden. Because I hate Caden, but it like frames him as this like the most sympathetic and like one true,
Mm.
honest, beautiful person alive, and I just hated him so much throughout the entire movie. And this is coming from another existentialist and another person. Like I'm a nihilist, and like I agree with a lot of what he says, but I have accepted that life is meaningless, at least in my view, and
Mm.
I just try and live my life to the best of my ability. And sometimes I am in a funk, but that's not all the time, and he is in that funk all the time. And I'm sure there are people out there, but I don't know, his inability to change and the fact that Charlie Kaufman wrote it in a way and directed it in a way that made it like very transparently manipulative into trying to get you to sympathize with this horrible person. It just it all felt just so wrong.
I really don't, I don't see it that way. I don't think I was supposed to sympathize with him. When I watched it for the first time, like, I know, like, sure, there are certain aspects of himself that you're supposed to go, well, that sucks when he goes to Berlin and his daughter's like with the tattoos and is dancing in the glass. Like, you're supposed to feel a bit, oh, that sucks, But at the same time, he kind of brought that on himself in a way with, the relationship with Adele and him being a bit negligent towards things. So you're supposed to like have a little bit of sympathy, but there's always that undercurrent of, well, you kind of had that coming as well, which is how I view it. But if that's not enough for you, then I could totally see how that would be problematic and it's a bit hard to invest in the character when they're not necessarily you know an engaging or endearing character. Yeah.
See, the thing is, like, I mean, I feel like a lot of the scenes with Olive and Maria were like the most manipulative in the movie because it tried to get me to like feel bad for this person who's already feeling horrible. And like part of me, gets it. I mean, you wouldn't want your
Yeah.
daughter to do that, but the other part of me is like, I mean, seriously, dude. I mean, you were negligent and not a good dad and not a good husband, and I mean, it's not your decision anymore. And yes, it kind of sucks, but I mean, you can't do anything about it. And like,
Yeah.
it all just, I don't get why Caden is constantly so just brutally harsh towards everyone around him, even that he likes. I mean, like initially he's nice to people as just kind of a facade, like this warehouse itself. But it just it once it, I guess that's the point of the movie. It's the facade, and once you peel it
Mm.
back, there's nothing but ugliness, and that is a very interesting idea I just thought about. But I still don't like the movie under just how much it tries to force upon you that Caden is a sympathetic and nice person that you should enjoy, like whose presence you should enjoy.
Yeah, I think the problem is that when you have a main character, most of the time you're supposed to be sympathetic towards them, and that's true in some cases with Caden's character. But I don't necessarily see him as like as bad as you make him out to be. Like, he has bad points, but I wouldn't say like he's the most like awful person ever. But I think that inherently as a concept, your wife and your daughter, no matter how you've been as a husband, is kind of a sad concept to think about, I guess. And what happens to him when he goes to Berlin and tries to find them and stuff like that. It's just a bit, I can't help but not, sympathize in some way with that. But at the same time, I think uh, I guess one of the things of this film is that it's a bit of a complex thing to pin down. But I guess like it's a bit hard to distinguish between what's supposed to be sympathetic and what's supposed to be kind of like a, cynical about it, a bit more reviled about it. You know what I mean? Like, there's kind of that distinction that's a bit hard to put down, and I think that's where people's interpretations of the film come in. I think anyone could interpret the events differently, than you or me did. You know. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I've like initially I think Caden is okay, and I feel like like the I again it's like a facade that the movie puts up, and to just hide the ugly truth about him and everybody around him, except it's only him who has that facade up, and everybody around him is horrible, except for maybe his daughter, but he can't do that, and he
Yeah.
can't like he can't do anything like about she. Well, let me rephrase that. She
Yeah.
can't do anything about the situation at hand, And you know, it's like once that facade falls down, the entire movie falls apart. I think the last half of this movie, like once he gets his theater piece underway,
Well, yeah, he
I
never
I
finished.
I just hate it. It just it's I feel like it's supposed to be like like life. Everything just circles around over and over in this dull, horrible circle. And part of me is like, yeah, that's an interesting idea. And the other part of me is just so bored through all of it, and just I don't like any of the stuff with his stalker. I don't. Although I do think the part where he commits suicide is, contrary to your opinion on it, actually a really powerful scene. Um,
Oh no,
like
yeah, I think it's a great scene. Yeah.
okay, I just like it just none of it felt as interesting as the first half of the movie, and like all of his relationships with just I mean they didn't work out, and I get that it's kind of showing how horrible of a person he is. I don't know how they got started in the first place. I don't know why anybody would like him or want to work with him. I don't see how any of this could work out for him. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it just all stems from the mind of Charlie Kaufman, who I am liking less and less. He's just such an
Mm.
unlikable person. He's so, like, again, it's so self indulgent. This movie is just, like,
See,
so up its own ass, like, all the time. It grates on my nerves, and it just, like, it's sad, but there's no real, it's just so one sided. There's no real nuance to it. It's just, oh, life is meaningless and I'm sad and the world is empty. Oh,
well,
I
yeah,
can't wait to die. And I don't it's not a balanced look at it at all, and it puts me in a bad
um,
mood when I watch it, and there's no real it's just empty for me. There's no real rich emotional center. It's just mindless, pathetic moping. It's
that's-
headache inducing. It didn't even get tears out of me this second time. I was just like pitying the character. I was like just not even pitying him. I was like, you know, just get your head out of your ass and do something about it. And he just never did. And he died at an early age because he couldn't do anything but think about death. And I think about death a lot too. But this man could not let it go, and I've come to terms with it, and this man had so many times where he could have come to terms with it and just accepted
mm.
his fate, and he didn't. And I don't know, it's really just bugs the daylights out of me. And I get everything about this movie could be dismissed as a character flaw, but there aren't the main character is not a character. It is Charlie Kaufman. This man is living and breathing among us. And it's just really upsetting to know that this person has all these thoughts and just lets it out in this mundane, just it's just a pity party, and I can't I don't want to watch it again.
I think yeah, like that was very well spoken. I think you had a bunch of good points. I don't agree with most you said. I think that yeah, the film's kind of a bit like life is fleeting, it's repetitive, but I think there's also that, especially towards the end, there's that celebratory side of you lived, and it's kind of a call to like people that if you just keep doing what Kane's doing and repeating the same mistakes, you're going to end up like him. And it's kind of a call to arms to say, live, try to do as much as you can. But I guess like it's what you pull from it. And I've never, I've never really seen like Charlie Kaufman puts himself in the film, which is it's obvious. You can't deny that. But I don't think it's as I don't think it's as bad as like you made it out to be. I just don't see it that way. If that makes sense, like uh, it's something that's never really bothered me. I don't know.
Hmm. It's interesting that it's like that you think that it's like a call to arms, because you know I don't really at all. I just think it's just like, like beating down on like the audience until they're just flattened and then it ends. And that can work. A Serious Man is one of my favorite movies, except it doesn't beat down on the audience, and it beats down on the character, and the character, like, all of it fuels this intensely rich subtext that I need to talk about sometime. But
Yeah.
it's an amazing movie. This movie, I don't know, it's just so it there's no, I didn't feel like any of it was, it's just hard to explain. It didn't feel like, it just felt empty to me. And I
Yeah.
mean, I think like a lot of people are like, say that like this was a hug and everything's gonna be okay. And you know it I don't agree with that. I mean, I think people, and like most people
Mm.
and I just stand on different terms. Most people think it's like a cautionary tale. I see it as just a Charlie Coffin pity party, and it's just mindless wankery for two
See.
hours, and I can't stand it.
See, the things you're saying about this film, I kind of think about Anomalisa. If you were saying about that film, I would kind of more agree. But with this film, I think there's more elements of everybody in it, and I think it's more inclusive to me because there's multiple perspectives and different characters that run through the film, and from the women he has relationships to directors, friends, whatever. So there is that element to me. Anomalisa, just because it focuses on a very minuscule aspect, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way the more I thought about it. Yeah.
I don't like Anomalisa either, but that movie in the beginning, I guess it's more disappointing than Synecdoche, New York, because Synecdoche, New York, pretty early on lets you know that this person is horrible. Whereas with Anomalisa, I actually found myself relating with the main character up until a certain point in the movie, because like, he is a somewhat likable person, and I mean, unlike this movie, he he actually does have a reason to have women throwing themselves at him. And like, even if the reason is kind of weird, it is a reason. And like, I don't know, I felt like a lot of the themes of not being able to relate to anyone else were a lot better handled. I love the look of the movie a lot more. I think the voice acting is amazing. And then it gets into all of the relationship stuff, and it just again feels so self-indulgent. And I don't know. It's just like I said on Letterboxd. It's lost in translation for perverts. It's like in that movie, in Lost in Translation, nobody's taking advantage of the other person. But in this movie, it feels like very one-sided, and it feels very creepy. And I feel
Yeah,
like,
it didn't feel like it was organic. Like it just felt like it came out of nowhere. That's probably what broke it for me a lot.
and the ending is so abrupt. I mean, like just all of it,
Mm.
just like it. I don't know. His movies are always ruined by how creepy, like how creepily he writes his women. And it's they're all just hollow human beings, and this movie I think just reinforces that.
Mm.
I'm not actually sure I agree with that. I mean, I feel like all the women in this movie are pretty likable, except for maybe Adele, who is in the beginning. I mean, but I sympathize with her.
To a certain
Like
extent.
to
Yeah.
to an extent, I sympathize with her because Caden is not a good person. But like I don't running away that never solves any problems, and I
No, and
feel.
that's a part of her character flaw as well. Like,
Hmm. And like I do admire that this movie kind of poked fun at how pointless and like just wanky therapy is. It's so
Mhm.
like, oh, that must have felt terrible. It's so patronizing and self-indulgent. But that's this movie. It's condescending and patronizing and conceited and self-indulgent and everything I hate about movies. Like, at least across the universe, like, it had a style,
Mm.
and this movie is just so. I mean, this movie has style too. It's just empty and dull and lifeless and horrible, and I mean, lifeless, no pun intended. But like, just it's just one of the most detestable movies I've ever seen, and I don't. I know so many people cherish this movie for how therapeutic it is or how honest it is, and
Well,
I
part
get
of it.
the honest part, and I get how complex it is and how interesting it initially appears, but like the entire movie. is just so, I don't know. I feel like I stand on, different ground with everybody else. I think the movie is just so empty. And, if you like this movie, that's fine. But I don't, I can't agree with
Yeah.
anything the movie says. I'm sorry for all this ranting. It's just I have to get it off my chest.
No, that's totally fine. I think that I find it very interesting to talk about it because you're probably one of the only people I know that really dislike it. Like I know people who think it's average or think it's like just under average or something, but I've never met anyone who thinks it's like god awful. So like it's nice to have that conversation. But at the same time, I feel like not that you misunderstand it because you don't. You just have a different perspective, but it's just so it's in contrast with my own like the way I perceive it, the way I perceive the film. Like, sure, some of what you said is accurate about I've mentioned before about the whole detestable characters that the film feels kind of mundane and empty, but those are things that kind of endear it to me and kind of appeal to me. Some things I can't necessarily put into words. It's just how it strikes me on a personal level, and yeah, I wish that the film kind of went deeper on some characterization, and the film kind of does drag towards the middle. It was especially apparent on this rewatch, but despite that, it's got flaws, but it's I still admire it for a lot of reasons. I don't know.
Um, the thing is, like, I can't say it's awful because it's well made. I just hate it. If
Mm.
that makes sense. Like, I think there's a difference between thinking something is bad and hating it because, like, I don't know. I'm trying to find an example of a movie I hate but can't bring myself to call bad. Um, I don't know that like, this is one of the only movies, or the only movie, if off the top of my head, that I can name that I hate but I can't say is bad. But I
Mm.
don't like Solaris, but I can't call that movie a bad movie. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
really weird, and
I think.
I have this weird fascination with Synecdoche, New York, in spite of my hatred for it and what it stands for. But I don't know. I never want to watch it again.
Mm, I think you should watch it in like 5 years' time when you're a little older, because every time I grow older, I view it in a completely different way. I don't know what it is. When I was around your age, I didn't hate it as much, but I thought it was kind of okay because, like, I kind of had similar thoughts, but I didn't think it to that extent of like, that it triggered, that it kind of like set off a chord with me that much. But as I grow older, it kind of takes on a new form. So you might not want to watch it again now, but I reckon in 5 years' time, just out of curiosity's sake, you might feel this exact same way, and that's no issue. But I think it's a film that changes as you change as a person. For me personally.
Yeah, and I mean that Charlie Kaufman has said as much, and yeah, I get that, and I think I should come back to it eventually. There's something about it that I just can't stand, and it just grates on my nerves, and I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, and I'm kind of fascinated when I get towards later in life how I react to it. If I'll change or if it'll stay the same, who knows? That's that's a curious thing for this film. It's like one of the few films I've seen where it kind of changes every time I see it in like ways I don't expect, and I think that's kind of beautiful in a way. But you know, at the same time, with people like you, I can totally get how the film just doesn't strike a chord and just seems very the character's not very agreeable, or the film as a whole is kind of very self-indulgent, and I do think that Kaufman could have afforded to maybe cut down a bit of symbolism and cut down a bit of that stuff because there is quite a bit of it, and I think he could have maybe tempered it a bit, but not like heaps, just a bit, because I think it does get a bit overkill at points.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I love the score. I think all the acting is great. I think it had good intentions, actually. I don't know. It had good ideas. It just the way everything was executed felt just, I don't know. I
Hmm.
It just leaves me exhausted, but not in a way like that I feel like fulfilled. It's not like 2001, which is emotionally draining. but it's also like one of the most rewarding movies I've ever seen. This movie leaves me empty and cold and just tired, and it puts me in a funk, like I keep saying, and I don't I don't really think that's a that's a way to go about making depressing movies, because you can watch depressing movies and you can move on. I mean, I can't
Yeah,
really think of many movies that are like life ruiningly depressing, but this is a movie that is kind of life ruining, and I hate that
yeah.
it's so depressing that it like people are watching it and it like ruins their life for days. Like I don't want to make movies like that. And like I mean, I'm sure I'll attempt to write like a depressing screenplay or something. Like not with the intention of it being solely depressing, like I'm sure Synecdoche in New York was attempting to do. But um, that was a joke, everybody. Um, but but like I don't know. Like I feel like there needs to be some sort of nuance instead of just life sucks, everything is meaningless and empty. And there is more to it than that. In terms of the story, I just don't think it's in relevance to that theme of death.
I think they're just tackling different themes. I don't think there's just one central theme and everything else is like, incidental. I think there is. It's quite complex. Yeah, he kind of overstuffed it a little bit, but what is there is very there's a lot to chew on for me. And if you watch YMS's analysis of it specific, you can tell there's so much thought and effort put into it. And he when I watched that, it made it a bit more like I didn't necessarily agree with everything he said, but it allowed me to kind of like see where the film was coming from a thematic perspective.
Yeah, I have seen those, and I do kind of wish he would keep making them because he's not finished yet, and I want to see what he thinks of the ending. But it did help, like me, kind of like take view it through a different lens and like catch a lot of the details of like how quickly time is moving and everything. And I
Mm.
mean, like I don't understand his obsession with it because he has to have seen it so many times, and I don't know that I would want to watch it as much as as many as like maybe 3 times max. You know, I've seen it twice already. That's good for at least 5 to 10 years. But
Mm.
like I mean, he has interesting points. I it comes down to that the basic, you know, like character, of it all. All the characters and the themes, like not even the characters and themes. It's just that Caden and the fact that I'm supposed to relate to him is like I don't I can't do it.
Yeah, I think if you don't have that sympathy or that relation, then it's really hard to put your investment in it. Personally, I don't interpret him as supposed to be like you're supposed to relate to every aspect or sympathize with him in every instance because I don't think it is. I think it's a bit of a the film doesn't necessarily want you to side with everything Caden does, but it's more of a commentary. But I expanded on that before. Yeah, that's kind of my interpretation of it anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like no, it's a really frustrating movie. It's one of the most it might be the most frustrating movie I've ever seen because it's so close to being so good. Like every Charlie Kaufman movie, it's so close to being amazing, and yet it just falters under the weight of how horrible the main character becomes. Like not just so quickly into the movie. It just and
Yeah.
like adaptation is my favorite of his because of that. And I mean, Eternal Sunshine isn't like that as much, but I don't know. It just there's still things in that movie I don't really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, kind of late in the game in mentioning this, but there are a few scenes where they're rehearsing at the theater thing, and Claire, Michelle Williams' character, kind of acts out the play, but obviously it was events that was happened previously in their life that they've taken to adapt into this play he's doing, and there's kind of this weird thing where she's kind of like addressing him while also playing a part as well. So there's that fact of like you know, um, it's like I'm starting to get pissed off with you, Caden, and I'm going to take it out on you through this, through this play you're doing. and it kind of plays into that whole, that Caden is supposed to, you're not supposed to entirely, be with Caden. In fact, um, siding with the other characters is probably like not the more accurate thing, but probably something that um, was probably more intentional on Kaufman's part. And Caden's play is self-indulgent, just like this film kind of is, which I don't know if that was intentional or if that's just like something I observed. But just how Caden's thing is self-indulgent, so is the film, and that kind of just carries on in both instances. I thought that was fascinating.
Um, like the thing with those scenes with Michelle Williams, I think those are good scenes, but like I still feel like Michelle Williams is supposed to be the antagonist in those scenes. Like I feel like it's trying to be like, shame on her for
No,
caring,
I don't.
caring.
No,
I don't know.
no, I don't. I don't see that way at all. I think that it's obvious through like what Kane's done before and how he brings this woman into her life that it wasn't going to work out, and you're supposed to view it from Michelle Williams' character that he was just doing it in order to cover his his insecurities, and um, you're supposed to you're not supposed to necessarily like completely like say, oh, Caden's done everything wrong, but you're definitely supposed to see through this character and go, you know what, you're right to like leave him. He's not a good partner. He's not working out. Yeah.
I mean, I could see that. I don't know. I feel like the movie was you just kind of forced Caden on me, and like I don't know. It just, uh, I mean, there are parts of it where like when his stalker kills himself, like where like I can definitely see it's kind of criticizing him, but he never changes. Like even when he's killed so many people, he never changes.
Hmm.
I don't know why. He just like the most he changes is he becomes like a kind of woman, and it's like
Yeah.
I didn't really get the thematic similarity like with the rest of the movie and that, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how I like we haven't mentioned it yet, but we'll go through it briefly, I guess. I mean, he comes like Ellen kind of, and there's a line in the movie that says like, I think I would have been better as a woman to like Emily Stone's character, I believe it is, or
Yeah, Emily
something.
Watson,
Emily Watson, my bad. Yeah, wrong name. But
who he also
um,
sleeps with.
yeah, he also has a little bit of an encounter with. But and I think it might have to do with the fact that he's not comfortable being in not only being in his own gender, but being with like the traits men will typically have. I think he might because he's never truly happy. He thinks that maybe being a woman would have helped something, but as we see, that's that doesn't help matters anyway. He just keeps being kind of like it's on towards the very end where he kind of comes to somewhat of a realization. But
Yeah, and I just I don't know. I I can't really elaborate on anything without just repeating myself. I
yeah,
mean, you're making a lot of interesting points. It all like the movie. It just loops back to that main character, and I feel like a lot of it could be character flaws, but like I said, I don't think it's a character. I think it's just Charlie Kaufman, and
mm.
it's not it doesn't work.
So, yeah. I don't know. I don't I don't see like the fact that this is supposed to be Charlie Kaufman as like a problem. I think that Charlie definitely does have some cynicism about himself, and I don't think he takes him. I don't think he sees himself as like this. He was like in his 50s when he wrote this, so he's obviously got to have some perspective, I imagine. So, and being the similar age as Caden was, there's obviously that mirroring to his own life, but I've never seen it as him, kind of you know, to be blunt, like kind of sucking himself off or just being, kind of just. I think there is an element of this was what he had to do to kind of like be at peace with himself and try to confront all his demons and good and bad, But as I've said before, I could see how that could really like not appeal to someone.
Um, I don't know. I think we just stand on different terms. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
this has gone on a
Mm.
bit long. But you know,
Yeah, it's been a long discussion, but yeah.
it's just I think we just have to kind of agree to disagree because I don't know. I just
Yeah, I guess so. Look,
can't
I
get.
hope that the discussion is kind of like, at least giving you insight to why I like it so much. Like, and you've given me insight to why you don't like it so much. So, it's kind of, I think it's a good discussion, honestly.
I think. I mean, I get why you think it's a good movie. I just don't get why you like it. I don't get why anybody really likes it, honestly, because I don't know. I don't think like
Well, yeah.
I feel like like if you see yourself to an extent in Caden, it's okay because I mean there are parts of him that I see myself in, which is the existentialist and the nihilist. But if you're like to the point of like this is me or something, you know, I can't get behind that because I don't
Yeah.
know. Uh,
Look, I just, I know, I just like how, not that, it's just pure on an emotional basis. Like, as you said, like, the film's well made, and, it's, as you said, so close to being good, but what puts it over for me is that the fact that everything is so, like, uh, even though the character has flaws, it's such an interesting character study to me. The fact that, um, sure, he does so many, like, some detestable things, but I found it, rather than something I actually hated for the movie, I actually liked it and endeared me to the movie, and the fact that it's a mirror to many other people's lives, I mean, like, not just mine, and um, I like the I like this like I just like how the movie plays out, and towards the end, like, I haven't cried every time I've watched it, but I've at least felt like, kind of like, as soon as it ends, there's kind of a hole, but um like, as you start thinking more about it, you start to kind of, like, come look back at it positively. So it's it's I get why you can't see why other people would like it, but it's something that's really hard to explain because it just it's one of the most emotional movies ever in that, you can't necessarily pinpoint exactly how everything makes you feel about it, and if you try, then it just comes off really, like, kind of messy, if that makes sense.
yeah, this is kind of the polar opposite of Spirited Away for me. Like, that movie, I can't really review it or anything because I can't necessarily explain why I love it as much as I do. There's a personal connection I have with it. Whereas this movie is the polar opposite. I can't really explicitly pinpoint why exactly I hate it, although I have tried for a very long time during this podcast like
Yes.
why I dislike it as much as I do, and I don't know. It just like I remember saying on Letterboxd, trying to review this movie is impossible, and that's about right. It's just like Charlie Kaufman just tried to make this movie that was just alienating to a fault, and
Mm.
I can't get behind it. And the other thing is, I mean, there are movies that like even in his catalog do this thing better, like tackle all these themes better. Maybe not death, but I feel like adaptation does a lot of like the metatextual and more surreal aspects of this movie much better. Um,
Yep.
and if you want a great movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman, who also plays a kind of depressed character, but is actually a masterpiece, watch Magnolia. And it
Oh yeah,
is
that's a fantastic film. Yeah.
it is 3 hours long, but it's worth every second. That movie's amazing.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, that movie's amazing. No, the only reason I watch it is because you loved it so much. You bring it to my attention, so I'm like, oh, I gotta check it out, and I ended up loving it. So yeah, I gotta thank you for that little, you know, indirect recommendation.
Ah, no problem. Paul
Mm.
Thomas Anderson's one of my favorites, and that's my favorite movie of his, which is really weird because like people don't like consider like one of his best movies, and that's weird to me.
I think that I think it strikes people differently. because it is kind of all over the place. But to me, when I watched it, it seemed very cohesive, even though it kept switching character perspectives. It felt very everything had a through line to it, and that's what kind of made it such a powerful film for me. You know.
Yeah, it's a stunning movie, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
we'll have to talk about that one sometime else, but
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I have to rewatch it eventually anyway. But
yeah, I've only seen it
yeah.
once, but I mean, because it's like 3 hours long, but I'm honestly very interested to rewatch it because it is so awesome.
Yeah, for sure. No, I totally agree. Um, well, we could talk about this movie forever, but I guess we'll just head to scores now.
Yeah,
Um, I've debated with myself if I should give this an 8 to a 10 because while I do really like it, I do have, as I mentioned before, I do have flaws. But for now, I'm just gonna give it like a 9. But it might change as like time goes on, but we'll see.
I feel like saying that I give this movie a 1 out of 10 is way too harsh, but I don't know. I'm a firm believer that if you hate something, you should not give it a 2 out of 5 or something. You should give it a half star or something.
Mm.
And I gave this half a star because I hate
Uh,
it.
no, I get that. Me personally, like, because the point you said it was well made, I would at least qualify that for like a 3 out of 10 for me. Because um, I don't really think a lot of movies are like 1 out of 10s. Like, unless like they traumatize me, like, or like they're just so horribly incompetent and misexecuted that there are no redeeming qualities on both the technical and the conceptual aspects. So, but usually films that are competently made, but I just don't like them, usually get a 3 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10 in worst cases. But yeah, that's just me.
Yeah, and like I have yet to see a truly incompetently made movie. Maybe Manos: The Hands of Fate or the Star Wars Holiday Special, but I like those more than I like Synecdoche in New York, if I'm being honest, because they're
Yeah.
so funny. So
No, no, I totally get that. Like that'd be a hot take for a lot of people, but I could totally see that, like in terms of like the entertainment value. Um, yeah, like I guess The Lion King, the remake, is an example for me where it's like a 2 out of 10, but it's got like a technical competency. I can't give it a 1 really.
well, that's
I guess.
because all of its competency in story and structure just stem from the original that is just mindlessly copying. So
Yeah.
I would give it a 1 if I had seen it, but I don't want to feed that cash cow anytime soon. So yeah,
No,
I'm avoiding
don't.
it.
I only watched it because my mum wanted to see it, and I didn't want to really ruin her parade. So I was like, you know what, fine, I'll give it a go. But yeah, I didn't end up liking it at all.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I walk into movies that I'm not excited for and I'm pleasantly surprised, but other times like I walk in promising like being promised that, oh, it's gonna be fun, it's gonna be like mindless enjoyment, like that last Fast and Furious movie, and I come out just absolutely hating it because it's just so poorly made.
Yeah, it's just like like I don't know. Some filmmakers just don't really. I don't know if they don't put thought or it's just misdirected. I don't know what it is. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Yeah.
A lot of times I don't want to blame the director because like those movies are like especially the Fast and Furious movies are so heavily altered by studio interference, but
Yeah.
to an extent they are to blame for it, and that's kind of sad. But it's just the worst part about the last Fast and Furious movie was the editing. Um, yeah,
Mm. For sure. I've only seen a couple, so I haven't really binged them all. But yeah, I would agree with what you say. Yeah. Cool. Um, I guess we'll move on to question and answer now.
all right.
Just, yeah. Um, I'm not sure if I've asked this question before, but um, it's just one that sprung to mind just based off the synecdoche discussion. Um, what's like? I know you said like you touched on the concept of what was it? How you hate it, but you can't call it bad. Um, So like, what's a movie you really respect, but you could never, but you don't really like it?
Oh
Yeah.
boy. Um, well, let's take a look at Letterboxd. Um,
Yeah. Let's dig through the ratings. Um,
Inside Out.
yeah, that's a definite one. Um, I guess like I don't really respect it per se, but a lot of people like it. I guess Chef. I don't really like that movie at all. Really,
Mm,
it's just it just like if I can remember like everything about it, it none of it feels genuine to me. And like the main character is kind of like like similar to what you said about Synecdoche, the character's supposed to be likable, but I don't sympathize with him at all. Like, and they don't provide any contrast or like any like you know to tell that like kind of he's in the wrong. It's kind of really driven by him. I don't know. I think that was my main problem with it. But I respect that he kind of like put his culture in it and tried to like do something different. I just didn't like it. I guess.
yeah. The original Star Wars trilogy. I hate to be a party pooper, but especially the first one. The Empire Strikes Back is decent, but the two surrounding it I don't like very much.
I mean, I've always had a soft spot for those movies, but they're by no means perfect films. But they're entertaining, enjoyable, and but they're not they're not like some thought piece or like absolute masterpiece like some people make them out to be. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like the last one I would say is Baby Driver. I really loved it initially, but I just like I can't really say it's bad. I just don't enjoy it at all, and I think it's really poorly colored, and I don't like many or any of the actors in it.
It's interesting you say that because when I saw it with my friend when it initially came out, he said he didn't like the coloring of it either. I've never personally found that a problem, but it's just interesting that yeah, the coloring is something that people find issue with, which I find fascinating. Um, yeah, that's one movie I have flaws with, but I just end up liking the things that I do like so much that it kind of overrides the flaws a bit. But yeah.
I mean, yeah, it has a good soundtrack. It's entertaining. It's just I don't really. I think it's my least favorite Edgar Wright movie.
Mm.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't know, and I think people give Hansel Elgort a bit of a bad rap in terms of acting. I've always thought he was like a good actor. Maybe not like a Daniel Day Lewis or something like that, but he's a good. I think he does good jobs with the roles he's given.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you there, but I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
maybe it's
I
just the
thought you
character.
would.
Maybe it's just the character is so emotionless, but the man is a piece of bread.
Mm.
He's just he can't move his face if he tried. Like the man is so wooden, man.
Mm, I don't know about that. Like, I think what the script called for him, he did fine. I don't think Baby's supposed to be highly emotive, but if you see him in The Fault in Our Stars,
No,
um,
I haven't seen that movie.
I think he's pretty good in that. I don't know. I wouldn't say he's emotionless or wooden in that. I thought he was quite good, but um, there are other aspects of the film that I don't really like. But his performance wasn't really one of them. He was fine in that, so I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. Even though I've heard like, um, not so great reviews for the Goldfinch, I still want to see it just to see if like, because I know people like Carson Runquist like it, so maybe there's a chance I will. I don't.
Yeah, I thought it looked kind of Oscar baity, but I was kind of holding out hope. But once like the TIFF reviews came in, I was just like, yeah, no, it's long, it looks dull. Yeah, no.
Yeah, I'll probably go see it when it comes out, but I won't be surprised if it's like too long or too bit. But I like sometimes I like seeing those types of films because it helps to like develop like oh what's wrong with these films like it helps develop like my thought process for like watching films. I don't know it's just a good exercise, but I know everyone wouldn't want to do that. But
Hmm.
yeah, but whatever. Um, okay, do you got anything else for that question, or you want to move on to the next one?
I'm good.
Okay. Um, okay. What is your question, young sir?
Well,
Well,
what is the most popular movie you haven't seen? Or at
oh,
least
that is a very good question.
according to like Letterboxd or something.
Okay, hold up 1 second. I'll be able to. Um, okay, according to Letterboxd, I haven't seen Dunkirk or Logan, which are very popular, apparently. Um, I haven't seen No Country for Old Men. That's very popular. Um, I haven't seen Psycho, surprisingly. Like, I know what happens and everything, but I actually sat down and watched the whole thing. So,
Interesting.
um, I haven't seen American Beauty.
Me
Mm,
neither. Me neither.
yeah, and I haven't seen Memento.
Dang.
Yeah, I haven't. I got to watch it, but there's so much stuff to watch. It's a bit hard to like. Um, I haven't seen Terminator 2.
Nah, it's not worth seeing. Hot take.
I mean, I haven't seen the first one in a while, and I liked it at the time. I don't know if my opinions changed now, but um, yeah, there's quite a few. I won't list them all, but that's like a rough like rundown of the ones I haven't seen.
For me, I haven't seen Gone Girl yet, or either of the Deadpools. I haven't seen Wolf of Wall Street. I haven't seen Drive, Silence of the
Hmm.
Lambs. I haven't seen Captain Marvel. Haven't seen Seven. Haven't seen A Clockwork Orange for reasons. Um, I haven't seen a lot of popular film bro movies. I haven't seen Requiem for a Dream or Trainspotting or Godfather Part 2 or, like you said, American Beauty or American Psycho. But I actually tried watching The Tree of Life, but I was so bored I turned it off because I was going to fall asleep.
Sometimes I do that with films. Like if it's late at night and I just don't have the drive to watch it all, or I'm just completely bored in general, I'll just switch it off. Like there's no point in like making like suffering through a movie you don't want to watch. It's just like it's yeah. I agree.
Yeah, I try to finish movies, but there occasionally comes the Barry Lyndon where I can't force I can't do it, you know?
Yeah, and I haven't seen Barry Lyndon in a while, but I do remember that it did drag like hell. It did drag a lot. I remember. Yeah, the pace.
I think it better. Um, oh, that's a movie I hate but can't bring myself to call bad. Metropolis. Which is another movie I shut off halfway through because I was so bored. I need to give it another chance.
Oh yeah.
I will freely admit that, but it was just so boring and so tedious and so I I get it's an old movie, but it's so poorly made.
Yeah, no, I think I watched the first half an hour of it, and I felt a bit of that same thing where I was just like, I could be doing anything else right now. Like, can't I do something else? Do I have to watch the rest? And I just stopped watching. I might rewatch it eventually, but in that particular instance, I was just like, yeah, nah, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, if I ever take a film studies class, they're probably gonna make me watch that, but I don't know. In any other context, I'm gonna avoid it.
Well, yeah, I've been doing a film class recently. It's film music class, and
Mm.
yeah, I've been getting to watch some movies. Like I watched King Kong, Rebecca, and Casablanca for the class, and yeah, it's been good so far.
Neat.
Yeah, and you have a choice, so you can pick like every week they assign 4 films, and you can pick from those 4 films. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's cool. Um, as
Hmm.
they better have Spirited Away somewhere in there because that one has the best soundtrack of all time.
Yeah, I think they might have it when we talk about animation. I think, but I think there's also a student suggested week where you can suggest your own anyway. So yeah,
Hmm, cool.
yeah, it is cool. Yeah. Okay, here's any other answers because I want to go to my question.
I'm good.
Okay, so this one's a bit more of a direct question, personal question, but I've heard you mention that you wanna do film or like something in that field when you get out of school and stuff. What would you do in terms of that? in terms of like a career for that?
Um, I want to be a screenwriter, but I know if I write a screenplay, I'm not going to be completely satisfied with it unless I direct it. So probably a
Mm.
director, but I mean, a screenwriter as a base, I would want to be a screenwriter, but you know, I would only want to give my screenplays to somebody who I know would do good work with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like someone who like kind of knows how understands your work and knows how to bring it to the screen to your satisfaction,
Yeah,
kind of.
exactly. And I mean, I've been brewing ideas for a couple of years now, and I mean, I've had good ideas. I just haven't really hit one that's like screenplay worthy. But you know,
Mm.
it's been fun just trying to come up with new ideas.
Oh yeah, I used to when I was younger. I'd used maybe not full on scripts, but I'd write story outlines out and do little skits and stuff when I was younger and stuff. It was fun. Um,
Mhm.
I've thought about like writing a full on script, but I haven't really tried to tackle that yet.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a lot of work, and you know, I've tried to do scripts, but like every time I get like 3 pages in, and I'm like, I'm just not happy with this, and so I just start over. It's not very efficient at all, but you know,
it's like that.
it's a learning process.
Mm. No, it's really hard to get into it. That's why I always write a story outline first before I do the script, so I have a bearing of where I'm going with the story in terms of like emotional and story beats. But um, writing dialogue it can be kind of difficult in terms of like making it sound, completely natural and or realistic, or what depends what you're going with your film. But,
Yeah, I had an idea to like record conversations I had with my family for like a couple of weeks and then just like making a movie out of those conversations, which would be kind of a pretentious film student kind of movie. Um
mm.
very Richard Linklater. Um but I think it would be interesting and fun to do. Just just like making a movie seem real is one of the hardest things I think that you can
Oh yeah.
possibly do. And um I I think Richard Linklater is, and to an extent people like Abbas Kiarostami, and I'm trying to think, you know, just really dialogue heavy directors are like really good at just capturing life, and I want to kind of aspire to do something like that. And you know, I've had ideas for like more horror centric scripts, but they really haven't really just gone anywhere,
Mm.
fortunately.
Yeah, I think that you're right in the fact that it takes a special kind of someone to capture reality and put onto film and make that convincing. I think that's a very hard talent to like achieve, but it takes a long time to fully understand and communicate it in film format. I think that's a very hard thing to do. Um, and same with like the opposite, like trying to make something that's like overly melodramatic and like kind of like detached from reality. That can be quite a challenge too. So there's always challenges within everything, but no, you're completely on the money there.
I hope someday I can become like president of the Academy of what is it, Motion Pictures and Sciences. So I
Hell
can
yeah.
I can just like completely sabotage the Oscars because that would be incredibly entertaining.
Yeah, or just like try to get people to nominate shit that you want. I don't know. Just like Hereditary deserved an Oscar. Take note.
Yeah, especially Tony Collette. Um,
Yeah,
and, you
that
know,
that was
like,
yeah, that was awful. Yeah, they should have given her a nomination at least.
yeah, I am kind of happy that Olivia Colman won because I love Olivia Colman, but Tony Collette probably deserved it.
Yeah, I'm glad they gave it to Coleman because like if that was the best performance in the category, so good on them. They actually gave it to the one that it deserved it, which is very strange for the Oscars.
I know, right? Um, I don't know, like, not Green Book, but I think The Shape of Water was. It wasn't the best, but I think it was fair. And just
Mm.
like I know that like if something else won, people would like that's the thing with the Oscars. If whatever wins is going to inevitably be called like overrated or something, or like Moonlight, like I've heard so many people like, oh, like it only won because they have black gay people in it. And I'm like, no, it won because it's a good movie. I don't know.
I don't know why it's so hard. I actually, my friend really likes La La Land, and of course, like I like La La Land, you like La La Land, but
Oh
he got
yeah,
really pissed when Moonlight won, and he said, "Oh, it's just Oscar bait," and I'm like, "It's not. No, it's not. It's just like what."
yeah. Moonlight's one of the most genuine movies I've ever seen. I would not call it Oscar bait in the slightest. I mean, La La Land is kind of Oscar bait, although, and that really hurts to say because I mean I love La La Land so much. I like it more than Moonlight. However, I can't really bring myself to call it a better movie than Moonlight. I don't know.
Yeah, they're very different. I
Hmm.
think it's really hard to compare them.
Yeah, but I feel like if Call Me
Yeah.
by Your Name won like the best picture that year or something like that, people would be like, "Oh, it just won because they're gay," and I'm like, "No, that's not how it works." And then Green Book won because it's a movie about racism. It wasn't even the best movie about racism in that category, and it won.
It's because it's safe. It's because it tackles like issues, but it's a safe film at the same time, so they feel like they can give it to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's entirely because Viggo Mortensen eats an entire pizza,
And
which
you
is the
call
best
it
part of
okay.
the movie.
Yeah, when he eats stuff is the best entertaining part of the movie.
Although that movie has gotten so much worse once you realize that uh you know the family of um the piano player in the movie has come out and said all like a ton of it is fabricated.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, and that just makes scenes like the fried chicken stuff all the more racist. It was just,
Uh,
ugh, it was not.
uh, it's as time goes by, and even now, people are gonna look back and say that was like one of the most awful choices for the best picture.
Yeah, I
Like,
haven't I haven't seen Crash, but I doubt it's. Well, I don't know. I've heard
I
it's
haven't
this.
seen it either, so I don't
I've
know.
heard it's really bad, but I don't know. Green Book Man. I mean, it's better than Bohemian Rhapsody, but
Yeah, if Bohemian Rhapsody won, I think people would have like tried to burn down the Oscars instead of just get angry.
I mean, people already want to do that because of Green Book and because Bohemian Rhapsody won like best editing, which if have you seen like that Twitter clip of Bohemian Rhapsody winning the best editing Oscar in the style of Bohemian Rhapsody's editing?
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
the
I saw.
funniest.
Yeah, because like they do it like there's like 50 cuts and like they're all awkward. And it's just like uh, it's like that scene in the film when they go out to that veranda and they're just like just having a chat and then it's just so awkwardly edited and I can't believe that won that category. That's baffling to me.
Yeah, and then again, like you'll never please people like who nobody will ever be happy with the Oscars. Just like nobody will ever
No.
be happy with Star Wars. So I don't know. Like I don't know, why people like even I don't know why
Yeah.
people even care about the Oscars anymore because like every year you hear, "Oh, the Oscars suck. Oh, we're gonna boycott them," and then we all watch them anyways and complain about them. I don't know.
No, it's people like to think they're above it, but when it actually happens, it's like, well, I guess I'm gonna watch it anyway, and it's just like, what?
Yeah, I mean, if you truly care about like, if you truly hate it so much, don't watch it. Just avoid it. Like, if you hear about like what won, you'll be like, "Oh, that's stupid," but like, don't actively support something and then complain about it when it keeps going and heading in the same like continuing down the same road it's been going down for years.
Exactly. No, I agree. I think people are really, really petty with that. I think. Um,
At least they got it right 10 years ago when A Serious Man was nominated for Best Picture, and unfortunately it didn't win. But it should have.
no, we definitely got to burn down the Oscars now. That's just sin. No,
Yeah,
come on.
Phantom
Uh,
Thread totally should have won Best Picture. Roma should have. I mean, They get a lot of things wrong, but I mean, I get that the Academy is a huge base of people, most of which don't even watch most of them, so they just pick the one that looks the best or has the most people they know in it. Um, which is
I
ridiculous,
know
but true.
I know a lot of people really like that Spider-Verse one, but I know
Yeah.
you like Mirai better.
Oh,
But
so much
um,
better. It's so much better. I love Mirai, and I've elaborated on Spider Verse in the past. I have a review on Letterboxd that you can read. But
yeah, it's very well written.
oh, thank you. It's
Yeah.
I don't know, can't get behind it. At least Spirited Away won Best Animated Feature. That's something I
Yeah,
can agree
that
with.
was well deserved. It was
Although
very well
I've seen
deserved.
people of late like say Spirited Away is overrated and people only like it because it won Best Animated Feature, and I'm like, if anything, that should make them like it less because the Oscars, like everybody hates the Oscars, and
Yeah, it's true.
like
I don't even think about that when I watch it though. Like that doesn't really factor into my thought process.
exactly, I'm like, how dare you? Like this is like my favorite movie of all time. I don't just like it because it won some silly award. Am I happy it won an award? Yes, because it deserved it. And I mean, it didn't really have much competition, unfortunately, but it still deserved it. I mean,
In fact, I think I liked it before I even found out that it won an award for that. Before I was aware of that. So
exactly.
thought the part.
Yeah, that was the first Studio Ghibli movie I watched, and it's my favorite movie of all time. I don't know, it's just kind of indescribable. But I mean, someday we'll have to do a podcast on our favorite movies, and
Yeah, I've watched that movie so many times, but
mhm.
no, it'd be good to have a conversation. There's quite a bit to talk about that in that film.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, and that caused me to check out Ghibli's other film in anime in general. Just like stuff like Totoro and like Pompoko, and the list goes on. There's a lot of films they've done.
Oh yeah, I'm as I've elaborated on in our fourth episode, I believe. I'm a
Yep.
huge Studio Ghibli fan, so I've seen all their work, at least all that I can find. And I would heartily recommend everybody to go down that same path because they've hardly made a bad movie or a movie that's boring or both.
No, they really not only do they understand the craft of animation, but they understand how the craft of like filmmaking as a whole. Like they're very consistent.
And they always have an emotional core. And like their worst movies are like The Cat Returns because I don't really think that movie has any of the emotion their other movies do have. It's just like a lightweight disposable adventure, and it's fine for what it is. It's just really not comparable to all their other work, and it's really bad as a sequel to Whisper the Heart.
Yeah, I think I might have watched a bit of that when I was younger, but I don't really remember much of it.
It's a good movie if you're wanting to like entertain children. I mean, I am entertained by it as a teenager, but it's really just one of their least memorable or like, complex emotionally and plot wise. It's a watered down version of Spirited Away with cats and much worse humor and animation.
Yeah, the animation. I distinctly remember animation being like kind of lower. I was like, why does the animation look so much different? Like even when I was younger, I was like, what?
Yeah, it's in a different style, but it
Yeah.
doesn't really benefit the movie any. It's cartoony for the sake of it, instead of doing
Mm.
what Takahata does and makes all of it the animation style changes very purposeful. It's just kind of there. I mean, it's fine if you like it. I wouldn't compare it to any of their other movies even slightly. It's not a favorite of mine.
No, I totally get that. Um, yeah, I probably need to rewatch some of their films eventually, but no, they're fantastic studio.
Hmm. I mean, we should do an episode on some of their movies sometime because, that's a lot of movies. But I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much to talk about there.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff, like, and overwhelming, but like, in a good way, not like it's suffocating. It's more like, yes, give me more. It's kind of like that thing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember it's been over 2 years now since I first discovered Ghibli, and I remember like distinctly around this time, it's turning fall, and I remember discovering Studio Ghibli's movies for the first time. I remember watching Princess Mononoke for the first time and just, like all of it came at me like a freight train, and I fell in love with animation because it doesn't talk down to its audience, even when it's making movies for children. And
Mm.
there's just, I connect with them so deeply.
No, yeah, the movies strike a big emotional chord. You know,
Hmm.
it's like in all the right ways, and children can enjoy it too, which adds like a childlike sense of wonder to their films as well. And adults can get like the deepest meanings within. So that's why it appeals to me anyway. Um,
Yeah,
mm.
and I don't know. I could just go on about Studio Ghibli for hours, but I think we're pretty off topic. So
Yeah, it's okay. It's just go wherever the conversation goes sometimes, you know.
yeah. Anyhow, are you about ready for a recommendation?
Yeah, sure. So, I was kind of deciding between two films that I kind of wanted to recommend. Um, I'm gonna go with the one that's more readily available, Under the Silver Lake, as a recommendation.
All right. I can do that. I'm actually very excited to watch that movie because I've wanted to see it for a while, and it is on Amazon Prime, if I'm not mistaken. It's just
Yep.
I haven't been able to get to it yet. So yeah, I will definitely check that one out. Hmm. I'm kind of torn this week too, but mm, I have yet to see the renowned Korean revenge movie Oldboy, as
Oh,
as you apparently haven't seen it either. So
no, I haven't. No.
that will be my recommendation.
Wow, good choices. Yeah, I've been meaning to see Old Boy for so long, but I just never really got around. But like, yeah, nice. It's a perfect excuse.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, come back next week and we will discuss those movies.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. See our relevant links in the description, Letterboxd, Twitter, rate your music, etc. Yeah. Hope you enjoyed. Come back next week. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.